Good morning, everyone. How is everyone feeling today? Do not answer that. Welcome to The Sweat alongside my glorious co-host. That's Jessie, Coffield. I'm Emerson, Lotzia. You guys know the drill. We are here to help you get those lineups set leading up to kickoff.
As we do every single week. Now let's kick off the program with a summary of the injury reports that are floating around out there. Starting in Buffalo, where the Matt Barkley era begins. Yes, you did hear that correctly. He is your Bills starting quarterback against the Jets.
All right, elsewhere, Jamison Crowder is out, and both Rob Gronkowski and Sammy Watkins are not expected to play this afternoon, but a few guys expected back from injury. Leonard Fournette, Sony Michel, Khalil Mack, Allen Robinson, Quincy Enunwa. Also, real quick, I know Tom Glennon, our producer, just slacked this to us.
Chris Carson.
Yeah, no official word yet, but Seahawks are not expecting Chris Carson to play today.
Yeah, that's a hip injury, I guess. So let's bring in Greg Ehrenberg and Jeff Ulrich of DK Live to get their take on all the news and notes. Jeff, how much faith do you have in Leonard Fournette today after missing the last 5 games with a hamstring injury? Are you going to wait and see or roll the dice?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think he's a must-play by any means. I think wide running back is just so deep. I mean, you have David Johnson up there with, we barely have to get up. And then you got guys like Tevin Coleman, Tariq Cohen in the 5K range. I just don't really see the need to go there. I am expecting to have a pretty good game, though. I mean, it's a good matchup, and the Jags have been really run-heavy when he's in the lineup. So, yeah, it wouldn't shock me to see him have a big game. But, let's remember TJ Yeldon, Carlos Hyde are still decent backs. They're going to get involved. So I just don't really see the need to go there in DFS personally.
Greg, how do you feel about Leonard Fournette?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. And the other thing we have to keep in mind, too, is that Fournette's already left 2 games early this year with the injury. So week 1, he left early, and then I think it was week 3 or week 4, he came back and injured again. So I think they're going to be really cautious with him. Like Jeff said, they have other running backs to go to, and I just don't think they're going to give Fournette, a huge workload. But I think it is worth keeping an eye on how does he look today. Does he look healthy? Does he look like he's moving well? Because he could be somebody we want to target in the upcoming weeks.
It's more of a season-long play. If you've been holding on to him, you can start him this week, I think. But for DFS, like I said, there's too many other options.
Well, Greg, what about Sony Michel? He likely returns for the Patriots against Tennessee. But how big of a risk is playing this guy, given his history with knee injuries here?
Yeah, it's kind of similar thoughts with Fournette in terms of they have James White. They have Cordell Patterson, who's played pretty well at running back, had the big game last week. So if we look at Sony Michel, there's so many good running back plays today, and I don't think that they're going to be giving him 20-plus touches. And that's been a concern with Patriots running back for the last few years anyways. We can never really count on one guy to be the guy. So somebody coming off an injury, I just think there's other places we should look.
Yeah, Jeff, he is officially active, but how big of a risk is playing him?
I actually think he is going to get a full workload. I mean, the Patriots, basically, the first game he was active, they gave him 20-plus carries. They tried to make him their workhorse. And, I mean, he's worked in that role pretty good, right? So I'm not too concerned about the workload. Obviously, there's a re-injury kind of risk here. But I think what concerns me more is the matchup. I mean, Tennessee is one of the best run defenses in the league. That concerns me more than the workload. And so just take that in mind. I mean, obviously, the Patriots are favorites, so there is some upside with Sony Michel this week, but there's a little bit of downside too, just because of the matchup.
And guys, per my earlier conversation with you, Fournette is officially active. So out today, this is official, is Rob Gronkowski. So what kind of day do you expect from Josh Gordon? Maybe Tom Brady leans on him a little more, or do you think it's going to be another James White show, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think people have already talked about the matchup with Josh Gordon and Malcolm Butler a lot this week. It's a pretty good setup for Josh Gordon, I admit it. But, you look back at Brady over the last couple years, the outside threats really haven't, been his bread and butter, so to speak, for fantasy purposes. Brandon Cooks was kind of hit or miss, didn't have a ton of huge games last year. Josh Gordon in the same role. He's been a little bit boom or bust. Either he catches that long play, catches that long touchdown, or he doesn't. And he puts up 10 fantasy points. So I think personally, Julian Edelman, maybe Chris Hogan gets involved, but I'm looking for the more peripheral guys. Maybe it's a James White game. James White obviously a little bit riskier because he's probably not going to get any goal line carries with Michel back, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's an Edelman game where he sees 9 or 10 catches. So Josh Gordon potential. I think Edelman is the guy who sees the biggest uptick personally.
What do you think about this one, Greg?
Yeah, so I'm going to have to disagree with Jeff a little bit here for this reason. He said that Brady, in terms of throwing to outside receivers, hasn't had a ton of success in recent years, which, while that's true, how many great outside threats has he really had during his career? Like, the last one we saw who was probably as talented as Josh Gordon was Randy Moss, and Randy Moss had huge years for the Patriots. And I think that Josh Gordon...
Brandon Cooks is pretty good. He had Brandon Cooks for a whole year last year.
But Cooks also had a pretty good season. Like you said, boomer bust. But Cooks has always been boomer bust everywhere he's gone. Jared Goff has been great this year, and Brandon Cooks is still boomer bust. I think if we look at Josh Gordon, he's really explosive. I think he's the second best wide receiver that Brady's ever had to throw to. And look at the big game that Gordon had last week. I think that we could see something like that replicate itself. And Gordon's a really good play and really high upside.
Okay, let's hit some questions up real quick. Jeff, Fournette or Ridley for flex?
Oh, yeah, I'd go Fournette. I trust him enough, I think, over Ridley. Really a little bit, hit or miss with the touchdowns and stuff. I think you can still start Fournette in a season long, for sure.
Okay.
Hey, Greg, should somebody start Drew Brees or Ryan Fitzpatrick full PPR?
Yeah, so that's going to be Drew Brees for me. I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick could actually be a nice value for DraftKings purposes, but we're comparing him to Drew Brees. Like, it has to be Brees.
It's pretty close, though. Like, I would say that is actually pretty close. I mean, Fitzpatrick's been just volume-wise really good, right? And Brees has had some down games with, Ingram back in the lineup. So I agree. I'd still start Brees, but it is pretty close.
Jeff, what do you think about a Rivers-Gordon and a Ryan-Julio stack?
Yeah, I think I like the Rivers stack better. The Matt Ryan game, Cleveland, the weather's shaping up a little bit ugly. The Falcons tend to just not be quite as explosive outdoors. I like just stacking the Chargers. I think you can throw Keenan Allen in that stack too, and just hope that game goes nuts. So yeah, I definitely like the Chargers stacks over a lot of other stacks this week.
Hey, Greg, Duke Johnson or Aaron Jones full PPR?
Yeah, so I think both of them are pretty good plays today. I'm going to lean towards Duke Johnson just because of his matchup against the Falcons. I also think that Duke Johnson is not going to have a ton of ownership in GPPs today, which I think is a little bit wrong. If we look at the Falcons over the last couple of years, they've been among the worst teams at defending pass-catching running backs. There's one thing that Duke Johnson does really well, and that's catch passes out of the backfield. He's been one of the most efficient players in football. The issue he had under Hugh Jackson as the coach is Hugh Jackson just didn't like to play him. Now that we have the Browns making a coaching change, it looked like there was more of an effort to get Duke Johnson the ball last week and really be a featured part of the offense. So I really like Johnson this week.
Jeff, Fitzgerald or Dion Lewis?
Oh, Dion Lewis for sure. I don't mind Larry Fitzgerald, but the Chiefs have been pretty solid against wide receivers. You still have Christian Kirk there taking big plays away. So Dion Lewis in a great spot. His workload's been trending up too. Definitely Lewis.
All right, Greg, Aaron Jones, Chubb, or Duke Johnson in standard?
I know this is very similar to the question I just got.
But it's different.
I still like. What was that last part?
I said, but it is different.
It is slightly different because we added a Nick Chubb.
Exactly.
But I do still prefer Duke Johnson to Aaron Jones, and I do think this sets up as more of a Duke Johnson game than a Nick Chubb game. I was thinking he's the highest upside player just because of the potential to catch passes.
All right, beautiful work, you two. We are chasing and fading on the other side of your first fantasy flash of the morning.
Carolyn Azak in with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. 2 days after signing with the New Orleans Saints, Des Bryant is done before he even got started. An MRI confirming the wide receiver suffered a torn Achilles on the final play of Friday's practice. He now faces an 8-month recovery to reach full strength, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. The former longtime Dallas Cowboy acknowledged the setback on Twitter, writing in part, "This is the ultimate test. Thank you everyone for the prayers." The timeline for Bryant's recovery puts him on track to potentially be ready for training camp next year. That is, if he can find another job. The 30-year-old sat out most of this season after being released by Dallas in April, and now that he will be coming off a major injury, it's difficult to know if another team will take a chance on him in 2019.
Welcome back to The Sweat. We will be bringing you expert advice up until lineups lock at 1 p.m. because that's just what we do here on this show.
And don't get it twisted, we are not the experts. These people are, say hello to Reed Fowler and Steve Buchanan, both of DK Live, and the fantasy girl herself, Rosalie Michaels.
All right, let's hit this chaser fade, people. Game spreads edition. The Falcons are 5.5-point road favorites at the Browns. Chaser fade, Atlanta will cover here, Steven.
I'll chase this one. I think they're going to cover on this spot. This has ended up becoming my favorite game of the week to target. I think this has shootout potential. I think the Falcons will be able to cover in this spot. I will say, though, I think this game's going to end up being pretty close. I don't think people are giving enough love to Baker Mayfield, who's been playing really well lately. And this is an Atlanta defense that can be exploited. I mean, Mayfield has tossed 6 touchdowns in his past 3 games. I think he's in a really good spot here against the Atlanta defense, but I think Atlanta's still able to cover here.
What are you doing here, Rosalie?
Yeah, I'm with Steve. I'm definitely chasing this one. I disagree with him a little bit about how, I mean, it's only a 5.5 point spread. So covering it is not that hard. It's only a touchdown, right? So that'll cover it. So Atlanta has the 2nd most passing yards in the league. They're scoring over 28 points a game. Cleveland gives up the 6th most passing yards and allows over 27 points per game. So, yeah, Atlanta's offense has found that midseason rhythm. They're looking good. It's going to be cold there, freezing really, especially to a desert girl, and 10 miles per hour winds out there. But I still think that this is an easy cover for Atlanta.
Rosalie, you're starting to sound a lot like Steven here. All the weather information.
That's a compliment. I'll take it.
Oh, wow. Good for you, Steve. You're having a great day. Hey, Reed.
I'll just leave.
Yeah, no. Actually,
we wouldn't mind that, actually.
I like you, Reed.
Yeah. Go ahead, Emerson.
No, I was saying I like you. I like you being here.
Oh, I appreciate that, bud. No, I'm actually gonna disagree with these guys. I think they make really good points in terms of Atlanta. They're a strong offense, but Steve kind of mentioned to my point here that Cleveland is being underestimated in this spot. They're at home, right? Atlanta. Jeff just talked about it. Atlanta doesn't play as well on the road outside of a dome, and when you get not extremely inclement weather, when you do get some. Right, it's going to affect, I think, when you see Matt Ryan here and you look at what they're. Yes, Atlanta is 6-2 against the spread, but I do think Atlanta is a bad defense. I mean, we've all seen that their defense is susceptible to give up points, 28 to be exact. And when you have to throw the ball all over the yard, I think this is going to be closer to Steve's point, and that line has moved now up to 6. And so I do think it's a little bit closer than we think. So I do think the Browns cover here.
Guys, the Saints are also on the road and also 5.5 point favorites. You chasing that they cover, Reed?
Yeah, I want to chase this. Cincinnati has been one of the teams that we've seen now get hit with a lot of injuries. Washington is another one that's been hit on both sides of the ball. Obviously, A.J. Green, the most high profile, but you now have Denard still out at that slot cornerback, Vontaze Burfict. We've seen those splits before when Burfict has been out. He's been out for quite some time this season. But this defense is one of the worst in the NFL. So when you have this team coming through with the Saints, I think this is an easy cover here.
Rosalie, what are you doing here?
Yeah, let me give some shout out to Reed, too. He knows he's my favorite. So.
Oh.
Sorry, Bukes.
So, yeah, like Reed said, New Orleans has covered the spread their past 6 games. There's a lot to say with that, right? Both teams score a lot of points and are really bad defensively. But the Saints let up the least amount of rushing yards a game, so Cincinnati's going to have to rely on the air. And while New Orleans will be able to use all of its offensive weapons in this game, high-scoring game, I'm chasing this. I think that New Orleans covers the 5.5 points.
Steve, you going to chase or fade?
Well, while I might not be her favorite, my engine is definitely more superior, so I will say that. I think the Saints are definitely going to cover here. I mean, Cincinnati is just so banged up right now. I just don't think they have enough weapons to keep up with the Saints. I mean, without A.J. Green, we're going to be looking at a different offense here for the Bengals. And sure, Tyler Boyd's going to get his targets here, but if they can shut down Tyler Boyd, where is Andy Dalton going to go here? I mean, John Ross, there might be a nice value play because of how cheap he is. Doesn't mean he's going to get all the production, though, in this spot, though. So I think the Saints easily covering this one as well. It's just too much for the Bengals to overcome to do otherwise.
All right, Rosalie, the Packers are 10-point home favorites against the Dolphins, so you chasing or fading that they cover?
10 points is a lot of points, so I'm fading this one. They've only covered 1 game so far as the favorite this year, and that was -9 versus Buffalo. But we know that Buffalo can't score points. Miami is actually averaging over about 21 points per game, while Green Bay's averaging about 24. So 10 points against the Dolphins, I just don't know that they're going to get it done.
Reed, you were struggling. Yeah, okay. Reed, you were struggling with this one earlier.
Yeah, I mean, to Rosalie's point, 10 points is quite a bit, especially when you're talking about the NFL. We see another one at 16 right on the slate with Kansas City. But I do think that they cover this. And when you look at Miami's offense and what they're able to do or what they're not able to do, they really have to rely on these big plays with Jakeem Grant to get these points, right? They really aren't going to be able to necessarily rely on the run game because Green Bay's defense, especially the D-line and the linebackers, are playing pretty well. Even the secondary, right, with their draft picks that they have with Jair Alexander, with Josh Jackson, they're playing better. We're seeing now that Clinton Dix, or the departure of Clinton Dix, isn't hurting them as much. And now when you have a defensive line in Green Bay that's been tops in the league so far, going against Brock Osweiler at Lambeau Field, I just can't see them getting close to this number. So I'm going to take Green Bay here.
Steve, it's a big spread. You think Green Bay covers it?
Why is everyone having trouble here? I mean, I'm looking here. Is Brock Osweiler not starting? Oh, no, he is. What's the problem? I mean, since Osweiler has started, this has been his fantasy production. He came in, scored 31 DK fantasy points. Cool, that was nice. Then it went to 17. Then it went to 8. Then it went to 5. So what are we trending towards? 3 for today? I mean, come on. Osweiler he's terrible. You think that they're going to be able to score here and keep up with the Packers? No, absolutely not. They got to get up to like a 21-point lead. Then Aaron Jones is going to run through that hole that always seems to open in the middle of the field, and it's over with.
Hot take.
We get the sweater meter moving on a Sunday morning.
Garbage time points still count. They still count.
Yeah, but they're still garbage because they'll still be down by 40.
All right, guys. Rams are 9-point favorites at home versus the Seahawks. Chase or fade that LA covers, Rosalie?
I'm actually fading this one as well. Ooh. Surprisingly, right? I mean, but again, 9-point home favorites versus the Seahawks. Seahawks defense is really good. They're doing well. And week 5 versus the Seahawks, the Rams were favored by 7.5. Rams won by only 2. I think this game's it's still close. Seattle's defense is playing really well. The Seattle passing game, not awesome, but still they have the 3rd most rushing yards in the league. And they're scoring 23.5 points a game. So I think the Rams win, but I don't know that they can cover 9 points.
Reed, where are you going?
Yeah, I'm with Rosalie here. There might be something that we're not seeing at this number at 9. 9 is it's just one less in the game that we just talked about. And these are much better teams. And Seattle's a much better team, obviously, than Miami. I get it. Goff at home is a lot better than on the road. And we've seen it. Rosalie's right. We've seen it week 5, right? This shootout became a 31-33 contest going to the Rams. And what you really like, too, is that the Rams defense do have some areas that you can exploit. Obviously, with Talib being out, we've seen now Marcus Peters get burned quite a bit. Not to say that the offense on Seattle is like New Orleans, but at the same time, you have Russell Wilson throwing a touchdown on 8% of his throws. That's extremely high. We've seen that number before with Deshaun Watson last year. I do think that the Seattle Seahawks do cover here, so I'm fading that number.
Steven, chase or fade?
I mean, look, how are the Rams not going to cover here? I mean, look at the Seattle schedule. Look at who they faced so far. It's this cupcake schedule that they've had. Raiders, Lions, Cardinals, Cowboys, Bears, Broncos. Look at all those offensive juggernauts. Sarcasm font. No wonder why the defense looks so good. Because they're facing these teams that don't have any offense here. So it should be no surprise that the Rams hung 33 points against them not too recently. Rams covering this one.
Hold on,
yeah, but you didn't mention the Seahawks. The Seahawks who they're facing that they didn't cover.
Yeah, and Chicago's scoring almost 30 points a game. That's a good offense.
Is this segment over?
Is this segment over?
Wow, they had some pretty solid rebuttals there, dude.
You got my props here.
Solid rebuttals. Okay, we'll screenshot this later and we'll check it out. Scoreboard. That's what you go for.
Oh yeah, let's go. Sweatometer.
Hot takes from Steve Bukes this segment. I love it.
Hey, I'm feisty today.
He's feisty.
Hey, Steven, a couple questions on Facebook here. Should I stick with Chubb against Atlanta?
I don't mind it for him, but I just wonder, how close this game's going to end up being. I think it's going to be close. I think so. I don't mind it in that spot.
Reed, Taylor Gabriel or Doug Baldwin?
I'll probably go Doug Baldwin in that spot just because that game has potential shootout.
Rosalie, Patriots defense or Jaguars defense?
I don't know that I trust the Jaguars defense anymore, even against Indy. Indy's actually scoring a lot of points. So I really like them a lot. And I think that Tennessee has a potential to make more mistakes than Indy is right now. So I'm going Patriots defense over the Jaguars.
Steve, Mike Davis or MVS in flex?
It has to be MVS. I mean, we have to wait and see what the status of Carson is. If Carson is out, I might end up going to Davis, but I think I like MVS overall.
Reed, I'll go to you on this one. Benjamin wants to know Tevin Coleman today, question mark?
Ask
Yeah,
Jeff.
that's exactly what I was going to say. Ask Jeff. No, I do like Tevin Coleman in this spot. There he is. There he is. No, I do like Tevin Coleman in this spot. He's one of my favorite plays. And I hopefully Jeff does call him, because when he didn't, Tevin Coleman went off. I think Rosalie tweeted that out. So yeah, I like him in this spot.
Jeff has brainwashed you, dude.
Yeah, I know,
Oh, man. Drinking the Kool-Aid. Rosalie.
Yes, play Tevin Coleman.
Oh,
Good
here
to
he
see you,
is.
buddy.
There he is.
Hey, man.
He jumped
Special
in.
guest appearance.
Yeah, special guest appearance. One more here. Rosalie, Keenan Allen and Seals Jones, or Galladay and Jimmy Graham?
I don't like Galladay at all this week. I'm going to go Keenan Allen just because
You don't
the
like
Keenan
the other
Allen
one.
combo there.
Yeah.
I don't
yeah.
like the other one at all. Jimmy Graham still is not doing what he needs to be doing. So go Keenan Allen and Seals Jones.
Hey, Steve, Mahomes or Ryan?
Boy, that's a tough one. I mean, I don't think you can go really wrong in any route there. I'll give a slight bump to Mahomes just because of how good he is. But really, you can't go wrong either way.
And Mahomes can do it like in the first half too. So
Did they ask you?
Get those
Come on now.
Oh,
Hey,
jeez,
hey,
Louise, he is
Honesty
spicy.
is pretty good.
We're Reed, PPR, Mike Davis or Sony Michel?
Mike Davis, we saw the targets there last week, right? Which we haven't seen recently with Mike Davis. The thing about Sony Michel is you have James White taking up all those points. So I would have to go Mike Davis if, right, that Carson news comes down.
Alrighty, you guys stick around, because when we come back, we will give you all the lowdown on the latest news and inactives. BRB.
Pat Mayo here with an exciting new way to heat up your Sundays this football season. DraftKings has teamed up with Buffalo Wild Wings to bring you a fantasy experience like no other. Blazin' Fantasy Football, a new free game only available inside Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants. Want to win free wings for a year, game tickets, Buffalo Wild Wings gift cards, or Blazin' Rewards points? Here's how. Head to Buffalo Wild Wings, download the Blazin' Rewards app, and join. Already a member? Not a problem. Just log in and fire up the app. Click or tap the Blazin' Fantasy Football icon, join a contest, draft your lineup, and get ready to compete against rivals in all Buffalo Wild Wings restaurants. Blaze your way up the leaderboard by drafting who you think will be the top 8 players, including kickers. Best part? You've got a chance to really rack up the score with your blazing pick. It's worth double points, so choose wisely. Don't just wing it. Draft your team in one of Sunday's 4 contests before each half of the 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern games. Then, grab some wings, sit back, and watch your team light up the leaderboard. Come back every Sunday for new contests each week. DraftKings and Buffalo Wild Wings, the right stack for Sundays.
All right, what up, what up? Welcome back to this thing we call The Sweat. Let's get you up to speed on some news and notes floating around the league this morning. If you don't know, now you know that the Matt Barkley era begins today in Buffalo, so get very excited for that.
So excited. So if you're thinking about rostering Jamison Crowder, don't, because he's out, as is Chris Thompson. Gronk also out.
Yep.
That's official now.
So is Sammy Watkins.
Sammy Watkins, right? Yeah, he is out. That's also official. A few guys expected back from injury. Leonard Fournette is active.
Yes, he is.
He is active. Sony Michel is active.
Yep.
Let's see. We got some more down here. Chris Ivory,
yep.
He's out. Luke Wilson is in. Ronald Jones is out.
Okay.
You want to read a couple more of those?
Sounds good.
You
no,
wanna,
you
oh,
take
you want
it.
me to keep going?
You're grooving.
Okay.
Right
Taywan Taylor is out. Chris Thompson out. Jamison Crowder out. We already got that one.
Okay, cool. With more, let's send it over to Pat Mayo, who's live in the PME studios. Take it away, brother.
What's going on, everybody? I'm here in the PME studios. As always, I'm chained to the desk. I never leave. But Gary and Thorn has stumbled in as well.
I have.
If you missed out on the PME earlier, Cust was in the studio.
Right there.
He's right in the middle, but he's no longer with us. He's behind the camera now. He's out smoking or something like that. Either way, let's break down some of the trends with some of the lines in these games. I guess the big one right now that I'm looking at, like all the cash continues to be on the Falcons. 82% of the cash, 85% of the tickets, but only 61% of the picks. which means that big bets are coming in on the Falcons to cover this 5.5 number now. Open at 3.5, now 5.5. You just roll with the Falcons?
I think so.
But we talked about this a bit on our show, but just to kind of recap, the past 3 weeks, every public bet has won.
Yes.
It's been incredible. Vegas is taking a licking as it's pertained to the last 3 weeks. Eventually, this is going to flip back. So when we look at the games that are just so one-sided so far this week, like, it's not going to stun me if somehow the Browns, the Cardinals, the Raiders, like the Titans, all these teams that no one is taking end up just covering the number.
Look, I'm with you. It's going to break soon and it's going to break hard. But this particular spot against the Browns for the Falcons, I just look at this number, and for me, there are some teams where a 2-point swing, especially when you're already past like a hard number like 3, 5.5 doesn't really scare me off the Falcons too much. And the fact that the Sharps are on it, it's nice. I'm not going to lie, but I just look at the Falcons and how they've been able to utilize that offense. I know they're on the road. I know they haven't been quite as effective in outdoor environments so far this season, but the Browns just seem broken the last couple of weeks. And I think that just trusting Matt Ryan and that offense and a defense that frankly has just looked better in recent weeks as well. I think there's a lot to like there. Although I will say, I think last week against Washington, that was a case of just the Redskins not being able to play from down 2 scores, whereas the Browns perfectly fine and honestly, at this point, normalized to playing by down 2 scores. So maybe a backdoor cover in line, but I still think 5.5 is a fine number to get the Falcons at.
Yeah, I like the 5.5 there. The other really, really big one, the Chargers. 80% of the money on the Chargers, 91% of tickets on the Chargers, 74% of the bets on the Chargers. That line is now moving towards the Oakland Raiders. So the reverse line movement game of the week is that game.
Yeah.
Which is terrifying because the way you kind of have to look at it is the Raiders have had an extended time off. They played last Thursday night. And that was really like, as much as like we kind of talk and like, you go on Twitter and everything like that, the people are watching all the games. Most of the betting public does not watch all of the games. Their first real exposure to Oakland was last Thursday night.
Yeah.
And they saw them get absolutely whooped by a backup quarterback against a bad team. So that is the impression. And the Raiders aren't good.
No.
I'm not going to sit here and say that. But the Chargers love playing down to competition. It's in Oakland.
I mean, maybe the move here is to sort of take the coward's way out and just avoid this game.
No, I'm taking the Raiders. Screw it.
I would
it's
say
not fun, and I'm going to feel like an idiot.
And that's the thing. I described the exact emotional arc of what this game is going to be. It's feeling so smart that you've really outmaneuvered the betting public. You're on the Raiders. It's going to be fine. And then a quarter and a half in, the Chargers are up 17-0, and you really start thinking about what you've done. And yeah, you took Derek Carr and the Raiders. I would avoid this game. I don't really have a solid feeling one way or the other. I would be with the public if I was to just truly trust what my first gut check instinct would be. But I don't know if I want to lay 10 here with the Chargers.
I say my favorite one on the board is the Eagles game. That opened at 4.5. It's now 7.5. 7.5 is a bit scarier.
Yeah.
It was better earlier in the week, but it normalized at 6.5 for a while. And that was the time to just jump on the Eagles. But 7.5 is not scaring me. I love the Eagles in the spot.
No, I think you're right.
Off the bye week too. And
yeah,
I think the best number that came up is why am I blanking? Jason Garrett on short weeks as a head coach. Dallas played on Monday night. 2-16 ATS.
That doesn't seem right.
He's such a good coach.
He would thrive in scenarios where he really has to rise to the challenge. No, I'm with you. I like the Eagles a lot in this contest, even with that half point kind of on the swing number. I think that they are just better than the Cowboys. I'm on the under 8.5 wins from back in August on the Cowboys. I don't think this team is going to be good. I did never think they were going to be good. Their defense has shown some signs of life.
And now Sean Lee
is gone. And look, I don't want to oversimplify football, but time and time again, we've seen that this defense is not the same unit without Sean Lee. I really like one particular number. It's something we talked about a little bit earlier on in the show that has a lot of fantasy impact. 48 seems like a high number, a high total for that Colts-Jaguars game.
Unless you think that the Colts dictate the pace of that game.
Yes.
And if they do, then that number goes over easily.
Because look, they are the fastest paced team in the NFL. But as you've said, time and time again, we've seen Jacksonville, when they have the use of Leonard Fournette,
they muck it up.
They are more than content to win a 13-10 game where Blake Bortles doesn't have to do anything, where they run on first and second, and ideally also third down. This is going to be a game of long drives, slow drives, time-consuming drives. And look, even the Colts the last couple of weeks, let's not ignore the fact that having Andrew Luck drop back 60 times in a game is still in their DNA, but this is a team that has been more content to run the football the last couple of weeks in their own right. So I feel like this could be a very quick game in terms of how the clock just continues to move.
Well, the big thing with those two games in terms of the running, Marlon Mack back, yes, but they also won both those games by like 20 and 15 points, which is not something they had been doing earlier in the year.
But this is the first time I would say in at least a half decade where I would wager the Colts coaching staff has at least a modicum of confidence in their running game. So it's not completely off the table that they actually do kind of run the ball.
Okay. Last one, I guess the other fade the public game that I'm going on here. All the money all week, all the bets all week, all the tickets all week have rested squarely on the New England Patriots. -6.5 in Tennessee. That number has refused to budge. They're not moving it up. They're not moving it down. They're just keeping it 6.5. Everyone loves the Patriots here. I like the Titans.
It is such an enticing number to get the Patriots at under a touchdown.
The Titans play the greasiest games.
They do. They will also muck it up.
And I believe that Mariota is not a great matchup for the Patriots defense. He is the type of quarterback that gives them issues. Mobile quarterbacks tend to not necessarily dice up New England, but they're so slow on defense that it really throws them off their game. So like these 3rd and longs to get converted, if Mariota is willing to run, then I think they can stay within that number.
Look, Mariota has actually been, over the last 3 weeks, I believe the most efficient quarterback on 3rd downs. And this is not like Eli Manning levels of efficiency. He's actually converting 3rd and longs over the past 3 games. You could make the argument that he was just, playing with one arm at the start of the season.
Because he had nerve damage in his throwing arm?
Nerve damage seems like it would be a problem for a quarterback.
Nervous fella.
I have never been team Mariota, but I will say,
what if he was Mariota's son?
I'm somehow even farther away from that side of the ledger, but he's healthy. That certainly does help this team. They seem to have figured out that Dion Lewis is just their most potent running back. Like, they're really limiting Derrick Henry's role in this offense, which is probably for the betterment of the team.
And don't forget all the revenge factors here. Yeah,
a lot of revenge.
A lot of expatriates on the Titans right now.
Team full of expats. It's true.
Any favorite of those? The Eagles are my favorite.
Like I said, I really like the under in that Jacksonville Indy game, but I'm with you. I would suggest looking at the Eagles in that spot.
All right, Gary and Thorn. Check him out later on the Sweat and on Twitter at Gary and Thorn. That will do it for me. Pat Mayo, always hit me up at the PME. All my rankings are up on DKPlaybook.com right now as well. I'll see you all Monday morning, 10 a.m. live on the DraftKings YouTube channel, recapping the week and taking your trade questions and your ad drop questions. Back to you guys in the studio.
Good stuff, Pat and Gary. And we got more for you right now because it's time for Papa John's Make Your Pick.
Hey, I'm Brendan Glasheen, along with the DK Live duo, Adam Levitan and Steve Buchanan. They're here to help you make your pick for DraftKings Team Pick'em, presented by Papa John's. You get 25% off any regular menu price orders by using the promo code DK25. We're targeting 3 games in Week 10 with interesting storylines. Falcons at the Browns. Atlanta's won 3 straight, while Cleveland has lost 4 in a row. Levy, Baker and company, do they stop the bleeding this week?
Yeah, I'm a sucker for the Browns. I'm always on the Browns at home, and this is going to be no different. I think the Falcons were played way over their heads coming out of the bye last week against the Redskins team that was pretty overrated. This is a far tougher matchup, back-to-back road games for Atlanta going into Cleveland, and I think we saw some signs of the coaching change will help yesterday, getting Duke Johnson involved, being a little bit more creative were the Browns. So I'll go ahead and stick with them at home and get a win.
Steve, do the Falcons keep it rolling offensively and get a 4th straight win?
Yeah, I like the Falcons in this spot. I mean, they came in and faced Washington. No one's really giving them a chance, it felt like. They had a decisive 38-14 win. And look, Matt Ryan's been on an absolute tear as of late. He's thrown for over at least 350 yards and 8 touchdowns over their last 3 games. And the Browns have been very generous to opposing quarterbacks, and that hasn't changed. I definitely like what the Browns are doing, getting Duke Johnson more involved. I think this game has shootout potential, but I think the Falcons just simply have too many weapons they can go to and take this win here.
All right, next, AFC South clash in Indy. Colts host the Jaguars, both teams coming off their bye weeks. Which team has the edge and pulls this one out, Steve?
Yeah, Levy might be a sucker for the Browns, but I think I might be a sucker for the Jaguars in this one. I think they might be able to pull off a victory here. I mean, both teams, like you mentioned, are going to be well rested coming into this game. I mean, aside from the Bills, Andrew Luck really hasn't faced any defenses that really scare you. This is probably going to be the toughest one that he's faced all season long. And then we can't forget that the Jaguars is still strong on the ground with or without Fournette, depending on his status for this week. Running backs have rushed for at least 90 yards 6 times against the Colts this season in 4 straight games, not to mention an average of 57 yards through the air as well. I think the Jags can squeak one out against the Colts, but I think it's going to be a close one.
Levy?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and stick with the home team again here. I think that the Colts are way better on the offensive line than people realize and way better defensively than people realize. So it's not just the Andrew Luck show. And even if it does turn into just the Andrew Luck show, I mean, he's looked awesome. Like, I thought the shoulder was completely done early in the season. He's looked great. I know, as Steve mentioned, he hasn't faced a lot of tough defenses. I think the Jaguars are certainly still a tough defense, but with the home field here and with the offensive line and defense playing the way they are for the Colts, I think I like them.
Last one, the Rams were finally handed their first loss of the season last week after starting 8-0. LA aims to bounce back at home versus the Seahawks this week. Do they bounce back, Levitan?
I think so. I mean, Seattle, I think we saw them get exposed a bit in week 9 as I think mediocre to a little bit above average Chargers team goes in there and puts it on them pretty well. I mean, Seattle has some wins. They do not have wins over very good teams. Now they have to go on the road to face one of the best, if not the best teams in the entire league, one that will be focused and hungry as they come off their first loss of the season. So I think pretty nice bounce back spot here for the Rams.
Steve?
Yeah, I mean, they're coming off their first loss of the season, but it's not because they weren't clicking offensively. I mean, Goff is coming off a game where he was just shy of 400 passing yards with 3 touchdowns, and he's exceeded 300 yards against this Seattle defense already. We look at the Seattle defense, they were so sloppy in week 9 against the Chargers. If you're going to be making those type of mistakes, the Rams is a team that is absolutely going to expose those mistakes, and they're going to turn around and score against you. So I think that, like Levitan said, this is a great bounce back spot for the Rams. They're going to add another win to their total this week.
That'll do it for this week's edition of Make Your Pick for DraftKings Team Pick'em, presented by Papa John's. For Adam and Steve, I'm Brendan. We'll talk to you next week.
Alrighty, struggling to figure out who to build your lineups around or which DST to target? Well, then you are in the right place.
We have Jeff Orrick and Rosalie Michaels here to help with those anchor picks. So, Rosalie, who is your chosen one?
I like Reed and Steve are my chosen ones.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding.
Wow. You don't have to suck up to them. They're not in this segment.
Just kidding. I love Jeff too. So I love everybody. It's a good day here in Arizona. So my anchor, my chosen one actually this week is Tyler Boyd at 7,500. I'm building my lineups around him because the New Orleans D is terrible against the pass, but the best against the run. So you know what? The Bengals are not going to be able to use their ground game against New Orleans. They're going to have to take to the air a lot. The top 2 Cincy wideouts receive the monster share of targets on Cincy, as opposed to all the other, what I'll call distractions, right? So the top 2, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, get 142 targets versus the combined 107 of Mixon, Uzoma, Bernard, Eifert, and Ross. So that's a huge amount of opportunity for Tyler Boyd with A.J. Green out. You know what? Yeah, they're only 17th in passing yards, but they're also scoring almost 28 points per game. And at $600 less than Thomas, it's a little bit of a discount on somebody who I think is going to get as many targets as Michael Thomas will today. And it's a high-scoring game, over under at 55 points, lots and lots of touchdowns today.
Jeff, one player to rule them all. Who's it going to be?
Oh, I love everyone, too. You know who I hate? I hate people who are wimps and don't like to take chances.
Oh!
Johnson is under 7K this week, and I get why people might have some trepidation here, but let's look at the matchup. Kansas City, last 4 of the last 5 games, they've allowed 7 or more catches to the running back position. The last 2 games, their run defense has essentially been regressing. The last 2 games, running back tandems from Denver. They've put up over 150 yards rushing yeah, Chase Edmonds might get a couple carries there, but he's not going to come in like Devontae Booker or Duke Johnson and get like 9 catches and steal all of David Johnson's thunder. This is still a very much every down role for David Johnson. I have some faith in Byron Leftwich. He's going to figure things out a little bit. And again, this is such a good matchup under 7K. So, yeah, I mean, David Johnson has not busted out for a big game yet. Doesn't mean he has a terrible floor or anything. He's still putting up 14 to 16 points easily every week, even in a bad offense. This is such a good matchup. I think people are really overlooking this spot. I don't mind taking David Johnson the spot at lower ownership before everyone else jumps on him. I think this is the spot you do it. Would not be shocked if you want a hot take if he outscores Kareem Hunt today. So give me some David Johnson at 6,800.
Yo, Jeff, how about a DST? Which one is the best play in your opinion?
DST, yeah, I love the Packers this week. I mean, look at the last 2 opponents the Packers have faced. I mean, it's been a terrible stretch of games for them. I mean, they almost beat the Rams, and they did record, I think, 6 sacks against them. And they played the Patriots pretty solid for 3 quarters until, their running back put them in a terrible position, right? So this is a good defense. They're 6th in the league in sacks. They have some talent in the secondary. They drafted well there. So they've also averaged 12 DK points at home this year, and they've traditionally been really good at home, regardless of their talent. Now they get Miami and Brock Osweiler against an offense that just does not score many points and relies on like these huge splash plays. No, this is an awesome spot. I do not mind the price at all. I'm kind of surprised they're not going to be the highest owned defense. So yeah, I love the Packers this week.
Hey Rosalie, help the people at home. Point them in the right direction here for a solid DST play.
Yeah, I know that Jeff just said he doesn't like it when people play it safe. I don't feel like I'm playing it safe here, but when you look at how much, yeah, you can get the Packers at 3,100, but if I can get Chicago's D against Detroit for $500 more, you know what? Detroit gave up 22 DK fantasy points to Minnesota last week. We all know what Chicago's D is capable of in scoring those high points. I can pay $500 more than the Packers D and get 22 points. Look at it at any other position. If we're paying $3,600 and getting 22 DK fantasy points out of that, pretty much guaranteed. I would guess that the Bears are going to go over 20 points in their defense with Mac back again this week. $3,600 for over 20 points? Yeah, please give me that.
Hey Jeff, one of the questions on Facebook right now: Mahomes in cash, Matty Ice, GPP.
Yeah, I think that's the way you play it. I mean, definitely getting up to Mahomes is a way safer floor. Ryan's fine, but yeah, I wouldn't use him in cash games. That game could get a little ugly weather-wise too. So yeah, definitely Mahomes in cash.
Hey, Rosalie, pick 3 in Standard League: Mike Davis, Aaron Jones, Duke Johnson, or Nick Chubb.
I think you definitely have to do Nick Chubb, as well as I like Aaron Jones here with Green Bay. It's a good matchup for him. Some of the other ones are intriguing too, but I think I like Aaron Jones the best along with Nick Chubb.
Jeff, Duke Johnson or Mike Davis?
I like Mike Davis personally. Again, it kind of depends what you're playing here. If it's just like a cash game and you don't want to fade the big names, probably just go Duke Johnson. But if you're looking for a GPP play, I mean, Mike Davis has performed. He was involved in the pass game. They're going to be down, so the PPR total could be big. I don't mind taking Mike Davis there. He's more of an every down back than Duke Johnson.
Alrighty, everybody at home, hang tight, please. We're stacking them up after this with Reed and Greg.
Carolyn Ezak in with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash, bringing you the latest on the Le'Veon Bell saga. Don't expect him to show up to the Pittsburgh Steelers facility this week or at all this season. Yup, he's throwing another curveball at us. As the Tuesday 4 p.m. deadline looms to retain his playing eligibility for this season, Bell hasn't officially come out and said whether or not he's willing to return and collect the $6 million remaining on his 2018 salary. But according to Adam Schefter's latest report, it's looking like a no. So what does Bell gain by sitting out this season? The 26-year-old has been trying to preserve his value and body, and in doing so, he's opened up the door for James Conner to get the work in the backfield. Conner entered concussion protocol following Pittsburgh's Thursday night win, making people speculate that a door was opening for Bell to take back his starting role. Will Bell report Tuesday, or will he officially pass on the entire 2018 salary? We'll see come deadline time.
All right, while you are mashing stacks on stacks on stacks at brunch, we're building a different kind here, and with a couple dudes who go by the name of Reed Fowler and Greg Ehrenberg.
Good to have you both back here. Now, Reed, hit us with just your top stack right now.
Yeah, I'm going to attack this Chargers-Raiders game. I think it's been well documented how bad the Raiders are, and really the Chargers are in a prime spot coming off that bye and really being healthy. And you look at Rivers and Keenan Allen, both of these guys play really well against Oakland. Oakland is virtually last in every defensive category. If you look at their pass DVOA, their DVOA against receivers, pretty bad. So I'm going to look at Allen. It's going to cost you about 26%, but if you look at Rivers as well, he's thrown multiple touchdowns in all of his games. He's the only quarterback to do that. Last time these teams met earlier this season, Rivers went for 22 of 27, 300 plus yards and 2 touchdowns. When you look at what Keenan Allen can do, yes, he doesn't have his touchdowns. He's that guy that now Julio Jones got his. We have to talk about Keenan Allen only having 1 so far. He's been a slow starter pretty much any season that he's played over 14 games. I do like him here anyway. Give me that because Raiders are just terrible.
Greg, top stack.
Yeah, I have the same exact one as Reed. And also kind of a funny note when we go do the contrarian stack, the one that Reed put in was the same one that I had and actually ended up pivoting to it last second. So we could have had the same contrarian stack and regular stack.
Twinning!
So
what a coincidence.
And no communication on it. That just was random. But I think for cash games, you have to play the Chargers today. Not only because it's such a high upside spot, but they're going to have so much ownership that I think that you could really put yourself at risk of just losing out by just not having the most popular spot with the most ownership. If you look at the Raiders, 31st in defensive DVOA, 32nd against the pass. And the Chargers, even though they are expensive, they're not really that expensive. Like Allen was somebody who was 8,000 plus for a lot of last year. He hasn't scored the touchdown yet so far this year, but that tends to be a little bit random sometimes in football, the touchdown. So Allen is still the #1 receiver on the Chargers. He's one of the best wide receivers in football. And like the Julio Jones situation that we mentioned, I think he's going to score the touchdown eventually. And why not this week?
Greg, you mentioned contrarian stack, so go ahead and hit us with it, bud.
Yeah, so for this one, I'm going with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. Now, the reason being that I think that Marquise Valdez-Scantling is going to be one of the highest, not the highest owned wide receivers this week. So if you look at a way like how can we get off Scantling but still create upside and have it make sense, I think that Devontae Adams be that target. It's not the ideal matchup against the Dolphins secondary, who've been pretty good against #1 wide receivers this week. However, Adams has been pretty matchup proof. He's been in a lot of tough cornerback matchups, and he's pretty much succeeded in all of them. There's a ton of volume for him there. Randall Cobb might be out, which would possibly force even more targets over to Adams. So I think the Rodgers to Adams stack is really high upside, and I think Adams is going to be sub 10% owned today.
Reed, what's your contrarian stack?
Yeah, it's going to be Baker Mayfield and Duke Johnson. Duke Johnson's obviously increasing in projected ownership. We've been talking about him quite a bit. He is in a prime spot against Atlanta's defense, right? Atlanta, we talked about it earlier. When you look at targets, receptions, yards, in terms of pass catching running backs, they give up the worst, right? So they're the best for opposing. And when you look at Baker Mayfield, these guys have to throw it around the yard. They give up the most plays to opposing teams at around 74, 72, but they also have the second most plays run. A lot of that could be attributed to their overtimes, but still, they're playing catch up quite a bit. We've seen their pass defense now falter quite a bit. So if you want to potentially pivot off of Duke's ownership, because I think he's going to be in that double digit. Antonio Callaway is another guy that finally healthy. We saw him get 51 yards. He is that boom bust guy. He's at that 4K range. All it takes is one play. These guys are going to have to pass the ball. And if you feel like this guy is going to go off, and if the Browns need to play catch up, Antonio Callaway is that guy for the Browns. Higgins, although he's healthy, he's just kind of being the fourth option on that team. So I do like this Cleveland team. Like we mentioned earlier, I think a lot of people might be underestimating Cleveland in terms of getting fantasy production. So I do like those two guys.
All right, guys, let's hit some of these questions that are coming in on social media. Breida or Golden Tate, no PPR, Reed?
Oh, I mean, Breida might just play 2 snaps and then get hurt again. So with that being said, I just go Golden Tate.
Greg, do you like Marvin Jones today?
No, not really. I just think there's a lot of wide receivers that are like more at that spot. It's also a tough matchup for him. And the Lions offense just looked terrible recently. Stafford's getting sacked on what feels like almost every drop back. If he's not getting sacked, he's getting hit or he's getting pressured. So I don't like the Lions offense at all today.
Reed, Trey Burton or Evan Ingram, season-long full PPR?
Oh, God. I mean, if you think that the Giants are going to be down in a lot of games, it's Evan Ingram. Just in terms of what Chicago wants to do, they're really focusing on their running backs like Tariq Cohen. So I'll go Trey Burton in that spot. Or excuse me, Evan Ingram.
Greg, we got a question on Twitter here. Is Vernon Davis a solid play at 2.8?
Yeah, I actually have a decent amount of Vernon Davis today. I was thinking that Jordan Reed's going to be pretty popular. If we look at Jamison Crowder is out for the Redskins today. Like, there's just extra targets to go around in that offense. And we've seen a lot of weeks this year, this being another one, where there just aren't that many good tight end plays. So I think it makes sense when there aren't really like good guys to pay up for to just go to the cheap guy that might have the most upside.
Alrighty, Greg, please stick around because Steve Buchanan is here and he wants to fight you after this.
Pat Mayo here with Sunday's blazing game day picks presented by Buffalo Wild Wings. Good news! With only 4 teams on bye, we're up to 11 games on the main slate this week. Who hates extra options? So, at running back, firing up Melvin Gordon makes the most sense. Returning from bye and a hamstring injury, MG3 played a season-high 88% of the Chargers' offensive snaps, cracking 100 yards on the ground, well, picking up his 10th score of the season. Pretty good. Whether it be by land or by air, Gordon's found pay dirt in 6 straight games, and now he gets the Raiders. He was limited to 58 rushing yards against Oakland earlier this year, but the best part about Gordon is how he always stays involved, even if he can't get anything going on the ground. In that contest, he ended up with 62 yards receiving. The game script is massive favorite this week, should net him close to 20-plus touches. And at full health, that'll be enough to propel Gordon near the top of the Week 10 running backs. At receiver, it's difficult to judge how the absence of A.J. Green is going to affect Tyler Boyd. Will he be in more difficult coverage, being treated as the most lethal part of the Bengals passing game? I'm guessing it does. Fortunately, that likely won't matter against the Saints because the volume will overcome the extra attention. In what appears to be a very pass-happy game script for Cincy, expect Boyd to finish with double-digit targets. And against this New Orleans secondary, that should translate into beaucoup DraftKings points. Finally, at quarterback, there will be the urge to get sneaky and roll out Marcus Mariota against the Patriots. And I don't hate that, actually, but it's probably unnecessary when Andrew Luck's priced down because of his matchup. Yes, Jacksonville's remained stout against the pass, but treating them like they're last year's Jags, big mistake. And like Gordon and Boyd, regardless of the matchup, their volume speaks the loudest. The Colts play the fastest pace of any team in football, and in every game where the Colts haven't won by 15 or more, Luck's averaging almost 50 passing attempts per game. He'll get there through attrition. Those were your blazing game day picks presented by Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm Pat Mayo.
All right, friendly reminder, people, Jamison Crowder, Chris Thompson, they are out today, but on the bright side, Matt Barkley starts at quarterback for the Bills.
Is that a bright side? Just kidding.
Yeah,
Gronk and Sammy Watkins are both out, but you know who is playing?
Who's that?
Leonard Fournette.
Okay.
Sony
Cool.
Michel.
Welcome back.
Khalil Mack, Allen Robinson, and Quincy Enunwa.
Oh, and the Saints reportedly trying to sign Brandon Marshall.
Yeah,
to replace
also,
Dez Bryant.
Earlier we had said that Luke Wilson was in. He's actually out. Got a shoulder injury. Not a huge fantasy impact, but just, you know, making sure everybody knows.
So there's that. And now this. Roll the open. Y'all know what's up. It's Put Up Your Pukes with Steve Buchanan and Greg Ehrenberg.
Wow, exciting stuff, gang. Who's ready for this?
It's no surprise. It's no surprise that Greg is on the show this week after I buried Julian last week and that Cairo doesn't show up. So, so Greg's here next week. Let's see who we get the week after because this isn't going to go well for Greg either. But sure, let's try.
That sounds like a challenge, Greg. All right, Steve, you're going to give the people at home 3 plays you like with some DK point projections, and then we'll see how Greg feels about them. So put up your first Buke, please.
Yeah, we're going to go with Dion Lewis. Actually, I feel like the buzz has been going up on him more as the week has gone on, but I think this game just sets up so well for him against the Patriots. He's been getting a ton of work as of late. 32 carries and 10 targets over his last 2 games, averaging 21.8 DK fantasy points in that span. Not to mention he's facing his former team. So if you like going down narrative street, there's always one you can take right there. I mean, for 4,600, you're getting someone who should be uber involved in this game today. It's the spot where the Patriots have been burned already this season. They're averaging 61 receiving yards to passing down backs with 3 touchdowns scored on the year. So Dion Lewis, help you save some salary. Let's see how Greg does on this one because it's not going to be good. But yeah, go ahead, try.
Okay, Greg, take it away.
Yeah,
well, Steve isn't going to be happy with this then because I agree with him. Not only do I like Dion Lewis, but I love the Titans offense this week. They're all pretty cheap. Like we have Marcus Mariota at 4,700. We have Dion Lewis sub 5K. We have Corey Davis at sub 5K. And if you look at how this game sets up, the Patriots don't have a good defense, but they're still favored by about a touchdown in this game. So the Titans are probably going to be playing catch up. They're going to have to be throwing the ball. We know that Dion Lewis is the guy who kind of catches a lot of those passes in garbage time. The only thing that I'd be slightly hesitant on with Dion Lewis is that Derrick Henry's been getting the goal line work recently, touchdowns in each of the last 2 weeks. Like Derrick Henry is not good at all, except the Titans still like to put him in when they're on the 1 yard line. But still, I like Dion Lewis. I like the Titans offense this week. So I'm going to agree with Steve here.
Wow. Agreeing with Steve. So far, it's going well for you, Steve. Let's hear your second Buke.
Yeah. Obviously, Greg wants to stay on the segment, so he's going to, be nice here. Let's go with Maurice Harris for 18 DK fantasy points. For someone who just jumped $600 in salary, he's still under 4,000. He's 3,900 today. He's coming off a huge game against the Falcons. We had a massive 12 targets, catching 10 of those for 124 yards. We haven't seen anything like this already from him, so it's hard to really project if this is going to be sustainable. With that being said, he's going up against one of the worst defenses in the league. I mean, come on. Tampa Bay, they can't defend anybody. Doesn't matter who it is. Greg could go on the field. Julian could go on the field, although it's cowardice, and still probably score against them. But they're allowing an average of 184 receiving yards per game. You're going to need to save some salary this week. There's so many running backs you want to pay up for. So I think Harris is someone that you can do that with.
All right, Greg, how do you feel about this one? Are we going to agree?
I'm kind of split on this. I'm gonna say no, he isn't, just because if you look at Harris's game last week, like he had a monster game. He had 12 targets, ended up going for over 100 yards. But I kind of tend to think it might be a little bit of a flash in the pan. I understand that the Redskins' offense is shorthanded this week. No Thompson, no Crowder. We saw the situation earlier in the year, and what happened with Harris? He had 3 catches. And we saw that from a lot at the beginning of the season when the Redskins were beat up. So I think that there is reason to roster Harris in GPPs, but I still have to take the under on this spot just because he's only done it once the entire season, and we've seen him in this situation fail before. So I don't really think it's a slam dunk.
Okay, Steve, you can't win them all right now, I guess. So
it's not a slam dunk, but that was a layup, so I'll take it.
Okay.
He pretty much, that's fine.
You guys are kind of getting along here.
Yeah, he wants to be back on the show, so that's why he wants to get along.
Let me add something on here, because if I'm going to agree with Steve, let's at least bury Julian here, because I think Steve could get on board with that. This segment, when Steve is gone, the segment doesn't exist. When Julian's gone, they're just like, we'll get anybody to replace him. Let's get Greg. I saw Julian Ships. I write his articles for him when he's gone. But Steve's gone, the segment gets canceled.
Oh, Steve, big man on the show. All right,
Poor
let's get
Julian.
your third and final Buke.
Yeah, let's talk about Aaron Jones for 16 TK fantasy points. He's in a timeshare, which obviously is a bit concerning, but he's going against the Dolphins. What are the Dolphins going to do on the ground? They've allowed over 100 rushing yards in 6 of their 9 games this year, with 7 rushing touchdowns on the season. Jones doesn't get enough work in the passing game, but that's not really going to be necessary in this spot because you expect the Packers to be up big in this game. I expect Duke Johnson and Dion Lewis to carry higher ownership than Jones does in this spot. So I think he can actually be an interesting pivot in this, especially because he's in the late games. If you need to late swap or try to catch up, I think Jones is a way that you can do so. So I love this spot for Jones. I think the Packers are going to be up big in this one. So this is really a game script for Jones.
Is this a game script for Jones, Greg? 16 fantasy points. What do you think?
Yeah, I have so much more fun this thing when Steve makes ridiculous picks. The picks are just too reasonable for me this week. What am I going to do? Am I going to tell people don't play Dion Lewis or Aaron Jones when they're core plays for me? These are guys who are in a lot of my lineups. So I have to agree with Steve here. I think Aaron Jones is a good play. The only thing I will say to go against it a little bit, the one concern I've here is Mike McCarthy is a dunderhead. What he does with the running back situation is just ridiculous. Aaron Jones is clearly the best running back on the Packers, but McCarthy likes to get away from for really reasons unknown. Maybe there's a little bit of added floor to him because Ty Montgomery isn't there, but still we saw Aaron Jones fumble towards the end of last week, which does give me a little bit of hesitancy with Jones, but still it's good game script for him. The Packers should be up, and something that I'm sure Steve looked at earlier, cold weather today. Historically, what happens in cold weather? Teams run the ball a little bit more than they typically do. So Aaron Jones, I think, makes sense. I agree with Steve on the weather angle.
Don't bring up weather in my segment, please.
Oh, my gosh.
All right, guys, we got some time for some questions. Here we go. Steve, would you rather have this week, ... David Johnson and Jack Doyle, or Marlon Mack and Azuma?
I mean, I want to decide. I don't like David Johnson at all. I think Jeff's crazy. We'll talk about David Johnson later. So I'm going to go with the Marlon Mack side, even though I don't really like Azuma as much, but I'll side with that one.
Hey, Greg, let's see. Landry or Cup?
So this is going to be Landry for me. Like, the one concern I have with Cooper Kupp is just there's so many weapons in the Rams offense. They have so many places they could go with the ball. Whereas if we look at the Browns, it's really, I think they're going to be behind, and the guys in the passing game they have to catch up with are generally going to be Jarvis Landry, who's a really good PPR play over the last couple of years, and Duke Johnson. So for me, it's Landry.
All right, last question here, guys. Flex play, Golden Tate or James White, Steve?
I'll take Golden Tate on that one, but I think it's pretty close. I just worry about the defense with the Titans with James White.
All right, thank you, guys. Another fancy animated open is next when we deliver Thorn in My Side.
Welcome into $1 Million Picks presented by Roman. ED meds prescribed online, delivered to your door at GetRoman.com. I'm Adam Kaufman, and look, we're here to make you money. The goal, of course, identifying players with the most upside for Sunday's main slate. Let's check in with our $1 Million panel, Reed Fowler and Adam Levitan. Good to see you both. Levy, who do you think will have a $1 million impact this weekend? Give me one or two guys.
All right, I'll start with an easy one. Kareem Hunt at home against this Cardinals defense, which funnels action towards the ground. I mean, with Patrick Peterson back there possibly shadowing Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins banged up, I think we can expect more of a run-based game plan out of Andy Reid this week. And Kareem Hunt has not only been involved at the goal line, but also in the pass game lately. And then I'll go a little further off the board for the second one with Marquez Valdez Scantling. Do expect Xavier Howard to shadow Devontae Adams in this game. We know Geronimo Allison is already out. We know Randall Cobb is washed. So it is MVS time for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I love that pick with Kareem Hunt, right? Not the highest priced guy should be really with that pick. But I'm going quarterback first. Phillip Rivers at $6,000 against Oakland. Look, Oakland is bad. They're the worst team in the NFL. And you can take a look at their pass rush. They're dead last in defensive DVOA, only getting 7 sacks. Urban is now gone. But again, looking at that pass game, 31st in pass DVOA. Rivers went 22 for 27, 300-plus yards, 2 TDs against them earlier this season. And you can really stack anyone with Rivers on that Chargers team. You can attack the ground game or the pass game. Really like Tyrell Williams.
Thank you very much to our $1 Million panel. Enjoy the games. We will see you next week on $1 Million Picks presented by Roman. ED meds prescribed online, delivered to your door at GetRoman.com.
All right, it's that time of the show where Gary and Thorn spits hate and shows his true colors. It's Thorn on my side, and he is joined by Steve Buchanan and Jeff Ulrich today.
Wow, so Gary apparently just very scary guy. All right, let's hear it, Gary. Your first of 3 fades, the 3 players you just hate, and then the boys are going to weigh in.
Yeah, this is when I get to overtake Jeff as truly the angriest Canadian on this show. Jeff is probably going to be angry about this pick. I know it's a staple for him this week, but I just don't see the value with David Johnson. I understand he is now a floor play, and generally speaking, when you have a guy with a high floor like Johnson, putting him in one of the best possible matchups of the week would, on paper, be a very sound move. But, you know, there's something to be said for volume, and there's something to be said for volume with zero efficiency, and I just haven't seen it from Johnson so far this season. He's only averaging 4.1 yards per touch on the year. That's besting only like Jordan Howard at this point. Not exactly the company you want to be keeping, because you don't want to be a player like Jordan Howard who's touchdown dependent on a team who doesn't score touchdowns. The Cardinals have only scored on 5 of their 35 drives on the road so far this season. That is by far the worst in the NFL. And I'm just not seeing this Byron Leftwich offensive messiah mentality that everyone seems to have. Oh my God, Byron Leftwich got a bye week? He's going to revolutionize this Cardinals offense. I don't understand what's happening here. I mean, yes, Johnson couldn't be in a worse situation than he was in with Mike McCoy. I understand that. But I don't think Byron Leftwich is this massive step up. I mean, this was still a guy averaging over 20 touches per game. I don't know how many more you can give him on an offense that just doesn't run a lot of plays ever. So I know Kansas City's bad. I know they've given up a ton of points to running backs in the passing game so far this season, but Johnson still hasn't been utilized in the passing game since week 1. He only had 4 targets last week, despite the fact he tied his season high in yardage, which is only 41 yards. So we're talking about a running back who is the ultimate road dog on a team with an implied total of 16 points. I think he's going to score like 16 DraftKings points, and that's just not enough for me.
Okay, Jeff, this is your chance to show how angry you can be.
Sorry, I fell asleep there for a second.
It's all right. Welcome back, bud.
Let's break this down for 1 second, okay? Here's what the Chiefs have allowed to running backs this year. They've allowed a touchdown to a running back in every single game except one, the game they blew out the Bengals, and it was over by like the first quarter, okay? They've allowed at least 7 catches to the running back position in 4 of their last 5 games. The one game they didn't, it was the Bengals game, where they basically ended the game in the first quarter. Byron Leftwich doesn't have to be a revolutionary. He's just got to be a little bit better than terrible Mike McCoy, and he is coming off a bye week. So when you're setting the floor, Darian threw out 16 point whatever DK points. I think that's about his floor. I mean, I just don't see him getting less than like 70, 80 yards total, 4 to 5 catches and a touchdown, because the Chiefs always allow the opposing running back to score touchdowns. So I love this spot for him. Like I said, I think 6,800. I think people are just getting scared of the fact that it's the Cardinals offense and they've been terrible all year. And they have been. I don't disagree that there's a chance he's just going to hit his floor and he'll get like 15 or 16 DK points. But that's not that terrible at 6,800. So I think the upside here is still really big. I think this is a spot where you go. And again, like I said before, I would not be shocked if he outscored Kareem Hunt today, because the Chiefs can score so many ways. The Cardinals basically have David Johnson, and that's it.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was expecting a little more rage because I wanted you to really get in there. Steve, it looks like you might have some rage.
What's wrong, buddy?
I mean, we've already spent like 5 minutes on David Johnson. He's too expensive. Like, how are we going to – I get it, okay? The Chiefs' defense, so bad against the run. I get it. $6,800. If I'm paying up $6,800, I kind of classify that as paying up at a position. So if you're going to pay up at running back, you're going to go with David Johnson. How about there's Melvin Gordon, there's Kareem Hunt, who is not going to be outscored by David Johnson. Let's put that on record. That is not going to happen. Jeff, you are out of your mind. I know what's legal in Canada now. Look, you're crazy right now, okay? Not happening. There's no chance it's happening. He's only getting about 4 targets a game at this juncture. I mean, come on, Jeff. You're so much better than this. And by the way, Garen, is that a new microphone? Your voice sounds very soothing this week.
Oh, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Wow. Very
All right,
soothing.
so go ahead.
All right,
Jeff.
let's get your next Thorn.
I mean, it's basically just David Johnson without even the possibility of being involved in the passing game. Let's talk about Leonard Fournette, who is also in a terrible spot this week against the Colts. And like I said, this is full point PPR. Leonard Fournette is essentially going to need 20 rushes, and he's going to need at least 2 or 3 of those to be in the red zone or by the goal line, because if he doesn't get a touchdown, he is not coming close to hitting value in this contest. And the Jaguars have just been putrid on offense in general, but especially so on the road. The only 2 teams worse than them on a point per drive basis are our friends, the Arizona Cardinals and the Buffalo Bills. And the average margin of loss for the Jacksonville Jaguars on the road is over 2 touchdowns. Again, only bettered by the Cardinals and the Bills. This is just a bad script for a running back who I still don't necessarily think we can just pencil in for his old workload. I mean, unless the Jaguars are completely incompetent as an organization, which I'm not taking off the table. That could happen. That could be the case. Why trade for a week of Carlos Hyde where you're only going to use him for 8 snaps? I feel like he has to still be involved in the game plan, as does TJ Yeldon. So I'm avoiding the situation entirely until I see how they're going to use Fournette.
Steve, you got so much rage. You can start off with your rebuttal here.
I mean, the problem with Fournette is what Garion just said. I mean, do we really think we're just going to toss him out to the Wolves and go, yeah, you're good for 20 carries today, no problem? I mean, he's only played in 2 games this season. He's been hurt in every one. And even in the games that he played, TJ Yeldon still averaged just over 19 DK fantasy points with Fournette active. I mean, obviously it's because he got injured, but Yeldon is still a very big part of this game. And then, like Garen said, they still have Carlos Hyde here too. They didn't just trade him for 1 week. It wasn't like, yeah, we really need Hyde for this game, and then that's it. We're done with him. We're just going to put him on the bench. Obviously, there's something there that they want with him. And then, look, they've been having to rely on Blake Bortles all season long. So I feel like they want to ease Fournette into this spot. I mean, he's a little cheaper than David Johnson, who's so expensive this week. Did you know he's too expensive this week?
I heard that.
I'm off of Fournette as well. Just too many question marks surrounding it. But go ahead, Jeff. Let's hear how he's anchoring your lineup.
Well, Look, since I'm on with the two stars of the show who have their own graphics and like segments named after them, I'll make the case for Leonard Fournette.
Okay.
He's not a core play of mine or anything like that. But look, this is make or break it for Jacksonville. They have to win this game to stay in the race for the division title. So what are they going to do? Are they going to rely on the arm of Blake Bortles?
No.
Or are they going to give the ball to Leonard Fournette as many times as possible in this game? I would go with the latter. So if Jacksonville jumps out on front, they get an early touchdown. And if that early touchdown goes to Leonard Fournette, you're going to see a big day from Leonard Fournette. So, yeah, the floor is not David Johnson-esque. It's bad because Yeldon could get involved. Hyde could take a touchdown or something. But the upside is very much there, in my opinion. This isn't the greatest Colts run defense either. So I think it's a very boom or bust play, but the boom is there. Like, the upside for me is there. It's just the floor is there.
Let's go. Make it a case. I like it. All right, let's get that third and final Thorn, please, Garion.
Let's talk Tariq Cohen. This really isn't about his usage in the offense the last couple of weeks. I know it's concerning to see him only get one catch, but this is more about game script. And I just think the Bears are in a position to win this game against the Detroit Lions. And in 4 of the 5 wins Chicago has had this season, Tariq Cohen has had less than 8 touches. That's just not enough volume for me to trust someone over $5,000, despite the fact that he is explosive. Obviously, he could do a lot and be very efficient with a low share of volume in this offense, but that's bordering on a little bit too low, especially considering how big Jordan Howard's bump in volume gets when the Bears are leading or tied in contests. It goes from about 23% of their offensive touches to 30% of their offensive touches. Also, the Lions really tend to just limit running back by committees through sheer slow pace. They are limiting opposing teams to just 58.5 plays per game. It's the second lowest total in the NFL so far this season. If you want a pass-catching running back around $5,000, go for the anti-Tariq Cohen. Go for Kenyon Drake, who thrives in terrible scripts. He has one against the Packers.
Tariq Cohen. How do you feel about this fade, Jeff?
No, I mean, this one makes sense. Look, I love Tariq Cohen, but this game could go so many different ways that you just feel like you're taking a risk with Cohen that you don't necessarily have to take. He can obviously go off on a low workload, but Detroit's got a bad run defense. If Jordan Howard gets going a little bit or their defense takes over, you're just going to see a game script similar to last week, and then you basically need him to bust a big play. There's always potential, though. I mean, if Detroit keeps this close, they will just take Jordan Howard off the field and just use Cohen as a receiver more and in the backfield. So there's always potential with him, but it's an unnecessary risk to roster him this week, in my opinion.
Steve, do you agree? Unnecessary risk.
I mean, his floor is just what does he have for a floor? He's just so massively inconsistent, but we've seen what he can do with one big play and limited opportunities. I mean, in a game where he had 5 carries and 1 catch, he still scored 18 DK fantasy points with 110 yards and a touchdown versus the Jets in week 8. You can't play him in cash at all. Pretty much what you have to do is you have to distinguish where the Bears are going to be at in this game. Are they going to be up by a lot, or is it going to be a close game? Because that really dictates how they run their running back committee. The matchup is pretty good. Like I said, he's not in a cash play, but if you want to take some risk, he's a wonderful GPP play because we've seen what he can do even in limited opportunities. 5,500 is not terrible because you're probably not going to be paying up for David Johnson because it's just dumb. So yeah, Cohen, not too bad.
All right, from one breathtaking segment to another. Here's Adam Kaufman with Mike Francesa talking Jets and Bills with Josh McCown under center for New York.
Mike Francesa from Mike's on WFAN here with me. And Mike, lots to look at today. NFL slate, including close to home for you. Let's start there. Your guy Sam Darnold out against the Bills with a right foot injury. So the Jets, they're going to bring in a man old enough to be his dad in Josh McCown. Josh, decent last year before he got hurt, but he hasn't had a snap all year this year. What do you expect from him and an offense that might be leaning on Elijah McGuire as well?
I think the Jets will probably play well. Buffalo's defense can be good. At some games, it was like the New England game, it was terrific. Minnesota game was terrific. Some weeks it doesn't show up. Some week it has to deal with the offense turning the ball over right and left. The Darnold injury was a little suspicious in that we didn't know about it early in the week. So a lot of people think this is a conspiracy theory. I don't know why they'd bother. I don't think it's a big deal whether Sam plays or not or takes a week off in his development. So I think the Jets will play well. I think Buffalo's really hurting on the offensive side of the ball, no matter who plays quarterback for them. So from that standpoint, I would expect this to be a Jet win. If they do, then I think that McCown will start the New England game. I don't think you'll see Darnold then until McCown loses a game. So whenever that is, I think that'll be the case. And that's not the worst thing. Give Sam to get a couple of weeks off, let them get things back together, because things got very sloppy in their last game with the offensive line, with the center snaps, and with Sam. So he took a real step backwards. So I think he's just trying to get his head back together.
4 interceptions last week, leads the NFL with 14. But you brought up the Pats, let's go there. Patriots at the Titans, and a lot of familiarity here. Tennessee led by former New England star Mike Vrabel as the head coach. The Titans added Malcolm Butler and Dion Lewis in the offseason. Lewis has been good. Butler has been just trash, maybe the worst corner in the NFL. You think he can muster enough motivation for that revenge game that people like to talk about after last year's Super Bowl benching?
Well, you know, there's familiarity here, as you said. And the one thing is the Lions beat the Pats because they took Gronk away. If the Titans take Gronk away, they'll have a chance too, although Gordon gives them another weapon. I think Tennessee's problem is, can they score? That's really what has to happen, because some weeks they can't score at all, and you like the Pats in close games. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a close game, but you figure it's a game the Pats will pull out. You know, the Pats are going about things the right way. They're sitting there. Maybe it's their year, maybe it's not. We'll see. They'll be right in the mix. They will probably play in the title game. You can fill in who will be there. Everyone hopes it'll be Kansas City. We'll see if that's the case. But I figure the Pats win a close game.
Well, speaking of City,
we're going off the wall for this next segment. Our experts are giving you their picks for which players they're willing to go way off the board for, hopefully, this week. Reed Fowler and Greg Ehrenberg of DK Live, and the fantasy girl herself, Rosalie Michaels.
All right, Reed, who are you reaching for?
100. Look, when you have all of these guys injured right now, right? P. Richardson, Crowder is out, Chris Thompson, even your offensive lineman on Washington has been out. I think you have to roll out 2 tight end sets. So it does cap Jordan Reed's upside a little bit. But if you look at Tampa Bay, they're second best for opposing tight ends, giving up around 18 DK fantasy points per game. So now you have this guy who, when Jordan Reed was hurt in that last week in a couple of series, Vernon Davis was targeted 7 times. And we see how much Alex Smith feels comfort with Vernon Davis, obviously playing in San Francisco with them before. So I do like Vernon Davis as a off the wall where we couldn't get 2 tight ends getting a touchdown this game.
Greg, go off the wall for us.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Mitch Trubisky here. He's somebody who really never seems to get a ton of ownership in GPPs, but he has so much upside. He only scored 9 fantasy points last week, but it was because he wasn't on the field. They played the Bills. They scored, like 6 defensive touchdowns or something. The defense was on the game for all 40 minutes the entire game, or how many? 40? Why can't I do math? 60 minutes. That's how many minutes are in a football game. If you look at Trubisky prior to last week, he had 4 games in a row over 20 fantasy points. He had a 41 fantasy point game, a 36 fantasy point game. He was averaging about 60 rushing yards per game. So just so much upside here. You could play him naked by himself. You don't need him with one of his wide receivers. And the other thing here that I think gets overlooked is there's a higher floor for Trubisky than most people realize. He's averaging 23 DK points per game this year, compared to Tom Brady, who averages 20. I understand that people are going to think Brady is the way superior quarterback, but if we're just looking at fantasy production, Trubisky's been as good as anybody this year.
All right, Rosalie, who are you going way off the board for this week?
I'm going way off the board with John Ross at 3,900. Some people may not think he's way off the board given AJ Green's injury, right? But he's still only 3,900, and a lot of people have a problem targeting him because he's had so few targets. But you can't deny the guy's talent. You can't deny his speed. You know what? I said earlier in the show, this Cincinnati game is something I'm definitely going to want to target. And the top 2 wideouts for Cincinnati, they get a lot more targets than the peripherals of the pass-catching running backs and the tight ends. So you couple that with the fact that the over-under on the game is 55. They're going to need that deep outside threat to keep up with New Orleans. And with New Orleans D, who gives up the most fantasy points to wide receivers, $3,900. Give me a couple of touchdowns, John Ross.
Alrighty, thanks, gang. We got more to get to on the sweat, including a little game of over-under.
It's your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Taralyn Azak. The Ravens are on a bye week for Week 10 and preparing for a big divisional game against the Bengals next week. But a major question for the Ravens right now is who will be under center. Joe Flacco suffered a hip injury in Week 9's loss to Pittsburgh, and now his status is in question. The veteran is reportedly undergoing tests to determine the severity of the injury. If he is unable to go, we may finally be able to see the Ravens' rookie first-round pick Lamar Jackson make his first career start. We have seen small flashes of Jackson this season. He's completed 7 of 12 passes for 87 yards and a touchdown, adding 139 rushing yards and a touchdown on 28 carries. Coach Harbaugh will have to make a crucial decision coming off the bye, as the 4-5 Ravens have lost 3 straight. And a loss to the Bengals could put an end to their playoff hopes.
Alrighty, final block of the show, and you know what that means. Quad box.
It's the final quad box. Okay.
Jeff Ulrich, Reed Fowler, Rosalie Michaels, Steve Buchanan. Before we get your slate approved picks, let's hit on some over-under and listen to Jessie sing.
That was beautiful, I know. We're looking at game point totals, starting with the Jags at the Colts. 46.5 over-under, Jeff.
I actually like the over in this one. I think this could definitely be a sneaky game to target for fantasy purposes too. The Colts play at one of the fastest paces in the league. Jacksonville kind of in a must-win situation, like I said. Yeah, they might run the ball more, but they're successful doing it. It's just going to push Indianapolis into more passing, which is really good. And they've gotten into these shootout games when they've been behind against the Jets, even against the Raiders, they got behind quick. So I like the over here. I think the total might have actually been dropping throughout the week, but I think this is a pretty solid overplay for me.
Greg, over or under? Nope.
It's Greg? Greg's
not even here. Reed.
Oh, no. I know Jeff does that to people where he just clouds everyone's vision. But I'm going under. I'm going under here. Yes, you have to win in these situations in Jacksonville, but I'm sure that's what they had to do every single game when everything was going wrong in that locker room where Blake Bortles was essentially on the chopping block. But now the Jacksonville has scored single digits in 3 games. And I just think when we talked about it earlier, what Fournette, Yeldon, Hyde, they're going to run the ball. You want to hide Blake Bortles. Just ask the co-host there at Emerson in terms of what they want to do in Jacksonville is hide Blake Bortles. I'm going to say under here. I don't trust Jacksonville at all.
Yep. Just go ahead and bury him.
Or under Julian. No, I'm just kidding. Jeff.
No.
Jeff's here. I know he's here.
I already talked about this game.
Oh my God. I'm glad. Rosalie, you're up.
Just start throwing names out till somebody answers, right?
That's the plan from now on.
How about less singing, more paying attention?
We need more mimosas, more Bloody Marys, I think, is what needs to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't hate that.
So I'm going over on this too. Look, not too long ago, this would have been an easy under, as Jacksonville would have gone into Indy as a huge favorites, right? But it's not the case anymore. Jacksonville's defense has let up 30, 40, 20, and 24 points over its last 4 outings. And the offense is not scoring very much, but you know what? AJ Boy is out. I think Indy's going to score a lot of points. Indy's defense not that good. So actually the Jags may be able to score some points. Yeah, they're getting Fournette back. But in the 2 games he's played so far, he's been largely ineffective. But they're going to have to do something to score some points. And so they're going to throw the ball a lot and get into desperate situations. So I'm going over on this. I don't like it a lot, but I think I have to go over just because of the amount of points that Jacksonville's defense is giving out.
Hey, Steve, have you answered this yet?
No, I haven't, Adam, so I'll definitely take this question.
All right, go. Wow, okay.
So I'm going to go under on this one as well. I can't trust that Jacksonville is going to score points in this one. I mean, their offense really, makes me nervous in this spot. I mean, I don't see any of their wide receivers really in a great spot here. We don't really know the status of Fournette. Yes, he's active, but how active is he going to be in this spot? So I'm going to go with the under on this one.
Reed, Patriots at Titans, over or under 47?
Yeah, I want to go over here. I think if you look at this game and what Tennessee has to do and what Patriots are going to be able to do, they're going to pass quite a bit. And if you look at the Patriots secondary or just their defense, teams are scoring at a pretty impressive clip through the air. 68% of the touchdowns are going to wide receivers, are going through the air. So that just fits into this great game script a lot more. We talked about Dion Lewis. It's going to be a Dion Lewis game. Tennessee's going to have to keep up, so I'm going to say over here.
Steve, what do you say?
Yeah, I like the over on this one as well. I think the Patriots are going to have a really good time here against the Titans defense. That's been pretty good overall, but there's just so many weapons at his disposal that I feel like the Titans aren't going to be able to keep up here. I think the Titans can score in this game. The Patriots defense hasn't been that great all season long, so I think there'll be points in this one. I like the over on this one.
Over or under 47, Rosalie?
Yeah, I'm with the guys here. Over, and it's mostly just saying how good the Patriots offense is, as opposed to how good the Tennessee offense is. They just have to play keep up. So 47 points for a Patriots game, that seems pretty low to me, so I'm going over as well.
Jeff, take your pick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love this one as much as the other one, but I will take the over here slightly. I just think Marcus Mariota is playing better. The Titans offense can score enough points to get this to the over, so round of overs here, I guess.
Guys, Redskins at Bucks, 50.5. Steve, over or under?
This is a tough one. I think this is the one I struggle with the most, and it's just because how decimated Washington's offensive line is right now. So I think you're really going to be able to get much plays out. I mean, Peterson feels like an awful spot here because of no O-line. So I'm going to go under on this one, but I think it's just going to be close. I mean, the Bucs can put up some points, but I just don't know how much Washington is going to be able to produce with so many injuries defensively right now.
Jeff, over or under?
Yeah, no, I agree on the under. I think the other thing is if Tampa gets out in front, I mean, they're not going to have to get in this shootout situation where they've been producing all these points, right? So I just don't know how Washington's going to score enough points. I think this will go under too.
Rosalie.
I'm actually going over on this. The Bucs have only gone under so far in one game this year. That's it. And they've had really high lines to begin with, so that says a lot. The Bucs D gives up a ton of points. They give up 34 points per game. Yeah, Washington's offensive line is banged up, but there's still enough opportunity here for a lot of offense, and you know that the Bucs are going to score a lot on offense as well. They have to throw the ball because they can't run the ball, and so yeah, Washington's D is going to give up a good amount of touchdowns. And AP says he's going to have to do a lot more with those offensive line injuries, which I believe that he will. And there's going to be a lot of tight end action. So I'm actually going over on this one.
Hey, Reed, what you doing, over or under? 4 for 4, Coffield, yes.
The names, we got it. We got it. I'm with Rosalie here. I think you go over. I think you got Tampa Bay, who's 7-1 against their spread, like Rosalie was mentioning, or against the over-under. And really, when you have Washington, who is 3-5, they're kind of the polar opposite, but I think they have to. I think Alex Smith is going to be able to run the ball out of the pocket. We've seen what he's able to do. I think they're going to be able to move the ball more so than they did against Atlanta, Washington is. So I'm going to say over here just because the Bucs run the play, and they're going to want to have some confidence with this game and in terms of moving forward. So I do think that they are able to roll up the score. They don't have a run game, so I agree with Rosalie over here.
Rosalie, Chargers at the Raiders, 49.5. Over or under?
I'm going under here, and simply, it's, you know what, the Raiders only put up 3 points to San Francisco last week, to that bad San Francisco defense, 3 points, and only 10 points to this particular Chargers team in week 5. The Raiders team just keeps getting worse and worse. They can't score any points. The only way this game goes over is if the Chargers put up 40 points on their own, which is doable, right? But, you know, you look at it, they sniffed at that many points against the Browns in week 38, but is it probable? No.
What say you, Jeff?
I actually really like the over in this game. It's a division game. Oakland, they don't have to score 30 points for this game total to go over. They just need like 20. And again, it's a division opponent. You're going to see the Raiders get up at least a little bit for this game. And the other factor is, yeah, the Chargers could put up 40 points in this game. So there's a lot of different avenues for this game total to go over 50, in my opinion. I like the overplay a lot here.
Reed, where are you going?
I'm going under here. If you look at the Raiders, their best offensive players are Jared Cook and Jalen Richard, and really can't stretch the field. Yes, you have Martavis Bryant, who can stretch the field, but he really hasn't done anything. 7 of the last 10 times these teams have met, they've gone under. And the last 4 in a row have gone under. So I agree it's a divisional game, but we've seen these divisional games hit the under. So under for me.
Bring us home, Steve.
Raiders over their last 4 games, 10, 3, 28, 3. Under.
What about Greg? We didn't get Greg's opinion.
Greg!
Oh, you.
Oh, you guys.
Why don't you sing some more? That was helpful.
We have less than 2 minutes. Everyone, I need your attention.
Don't freak out.
Slate approved pick time. Who's your lock for today's main slate, Rosalie?
Give me Michael Thomas versus Cincinnati, $8,100. Yeah, it's second to Julio, but Cincinnati gives up the most fantasy points to wide receivers, and he's Breeze's favorite, so Michael Thomas.
Hey, Reed, who you going with?
It's David. No, it's not David Johnson at all. It's Kareem Hunt. I agree with Steve here. Kareem Hunt is going to outscore David Johnson. Most people on the slate here. He's in a prime spot. Yeah, it's easy. It's in a prime spot. We looked at when Kareem Hunt wasn't utilized last year. They went 0-4. Now, obviously, he's being utilized more. He's in a prime spot. Arizona is bad against the rush. So Kareem Hunt.
Steve, slate approved, please.
Broken down Denzel Ward is going to get burned by Julio Jones this week. Lock in Jones.
Jeff.
I can't wait for next week when David Johnson goes off there. But my slate approved pick, whatever you want to call it, it's Marcus Mariota. Why isn't everyone playing him at 4,700? He's been great over his last couple starts. Quarterbacks going up against the Patriots have averaged 45 passing attempts over their last 5 games. It's a big spot for Marcus Mariota.
All right, that's a show.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
90 minutes of pure bliss. We appreciate it. We will
do
be
this
back
every Sunday.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
we'll be
this
back tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, 6 to 7. Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you're watching now, just keep watching us there.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. I'm Brendan. He's Adam.
Yeah.
We're out.
We're out. See ya.